The time is now 10 o'clock a.m., so we will go ahead and begin our session here today. Good morning and welcome to everyone. I'm your session moderator today. My name is Stephen Kelly from the Minnesota State Colleges and University System. I have a few housekeeping items to share before we get started today. First, we ask that you keep your microphone on mute until you need to ask a question later in the meeting. You can ask your questions at any time by entering them into the chat panel. We will monitor that. We will be saving all questions until the end of the presentation. And another reminder is that we are recording this session. And lastly, closed captions is available through the session. So if you'd like to enable that, you're welcome to do so. And today's presentation is titled The 4 Seasons of Collaboration, Managing a Multi-Campus OER Effort. And our presenter today is Carrie Miller from Minnesota State University, Mankato. So Carrie, why don't you take it away?
All right, thank you so much, Stephen. Welcome, everyone. I know that our keynote's probably a tough act to follow, so thank you for coming to see me this morning. I'm looking forward to telling you about a multi-campus OER project that we had and how I have tried to think about the project in terms of collaboration and we did well because it was a multi-campus effort and what we could have improved on and how managing that project went overall. So just a little bit about the metaphor of the 4 seasons. This spoke to me, so which is why I'm using it to talk about this particular project, but I'm sure as you all have your own ways and your own methods of finding metaphors for the work that you do. This is from Tan Nguyen, who is an ESL teacher and does a lot of work around collaborating and peer teaching. So his view is that collaboration is like the 4 seasons. You have these different stages. In spring, we're really moving in a positive direction. In summer, we're excited. Fall, maybe we're kind of cooling off. We're not as excited as we could be. And winter, we're just kind of done with the whole thing. And any of us from here in the Midwest probably can feel this even just about the actual seasons. I know I am definitely in the winter stage right now mentally. I'm like, I'm just done with this weather. I'm ready for summer and spring. And, fall's still kind of exciting, but we know that winter is coming. And I'm just, and it's snowing here today. So I'm really feeling this project is really speaking to me today of all days. So this is the framework that I'm using to think about this project and how it went, both as a reflection and as maybe perhaps a cautionary tale to some of you who might be thinking about branching out and going beyond your own institution to collaborate on bigger and maybe more impactful OER projects. So what was this all about? So in the spring phase, we were all very excited, and we in this was the library dean of my institution, Minnesota State University, Mankato, who was an interim dean, which is important later in this conversation, and myself, who was an instructional designer. We wanted to do something big, go big or go home, and we contacted the library deans of 3 other universities in our state system. So we are part of the Min state system of colleges and universities. And we applied for a state grant opportunity through that system to multi-campus collaboration grant to take my model for OER professional development for faculty and extend that out to the other 3 campuses and do it as a multi-campus project. So we were all very excited about this. We wrote the grant, we collaborated with these folks from the other universities, and we got the grant. So all great stuff in the spring phase, moving in this positive direction. And it actually was, this all did happen in the spring because we had to apply early enough. We had to do all the work to get folks on board. And this is the time that we were excited about it. So we're moving in a good direction. A little bit about the project. So as I mentioned, we did do a Min-State multi-campus collaboration grant. We requested $80,000 to provide professional development funds for the faculty as they completed their project, to support the project leads on the team, whether it's meeting, copies, advertisement, and then we also had a graduate assistant who was designated as part of the project. So he worked under me for the duration of the year-long project. We had librarians and instructional designers from each institution, and we had a and instructional designer who was the lead for the project, and that was me. Now, the reason for that is twofold. One is that I am the OER person on our campus. It's not official, but that's just me. I'm just the OER person on our campus. And then the other reason goes back to that interim library dean. Not only was she interim, she went on sabbatical as soon as the project started. So we did not have another person on our campus to kind of take the reins and lead this project. And our campus was the funding holder. So we were the responsible party for the grant. We were named as the grant, which if any of you have ever done grant paperwork or, applied for a grant or received a grant, you know that there's a serious nature of who's reporting, who's filling out the midterm and the final reports for the grant, who's managing the funds, all that kind of stuff. So if you've ever done that, you know that you have to designate somebody's got to do it. And we were that somebody. And then again, we had a graduate assistant. So what you're seeing on the screen is also the advertisement for that project. And before I get ahead of myself, I want to look ahead to make sure I don't give any spoilers away. But basically, we were advertising for faculty to do a variety of OER. We offered a choice in what kind of projects they could adopt, they could create, they could research, or they could lead students in creating OER and participate in an open pedagogy project. So we wanted to give them a range of choices other than just adopt. So we were hoping that would gather more participants, particularly from my institution where we had been running projects locally for the previous 4 years. So we kind of exhausted the adopt part, and we were hoping to engage people in a little bit more, a little deeper OER practice. So I'm going to stop for just a second to see any questions about the project or what we were doing. Hopefully you got that coffee in that 2-minute break that Stephen was talking about. All right, just jump in. I'm happy to have a conversation, a discussion, or put them in the chat. I do have the chat up, so you're welcome to ask questions or say, what the heck are you talking about? That's totally fine. We got 37 participants from the 4 different universities. It was heavily skewed on one university because they had not had any of this type of programming. And clearly their faculty were very hungry for this type of programming. So we had 7 and 4 and 3, and then we had, I think, 20 something from the other, or maybe the math doesn't add up, but we had in the teens. So we had quite a few faculty from one, and then more or less even split from the other 3, but it was heavily weighted towards one. Each faculty received $1,000 stipend, or whatever you want to call it. Depends on the university and the institution here in Min-State, but I'm going to call the stipend for the ease of use here. They received $1,000 to complete one of the 4 types of work that I mentioned: adopt, author, research, or engage in open pedagogy. So it was a pretty good turnout. We were happy with that for the first round of project. So we entered now the summer phase. We're excited to work together. We have our project teams. We've identified the folks. And so we collected these applications and we took everyone. We did not turn anyone away. All of our participants were excited to plan their projects, and we had multiple instructors who wanted to do multiple projects, which is the best case scenario. We did end up talking them down a little bit because we thought, okay, we're happy to pay you, but 3 OER projects in the span of essentially a semester and a half might be too ambitious. If you can do it, great, but let's not get ahead of yourself. Let's try 1 and see if we can get 1. And then if you have time, do 2. We're happy to keep helping you with that. The project leadership team met regularly throughout the summer and planned. And then we, into the fall semester, we met every other week. And what are we going to do? Here's what we're going to do. Who are the participants? Who are, all that kind of fun project planning thing that you grab into when you're launching off something major like this project. We had the funding. We had all of our interagency agreements. If any of you work in a system of multiple institutions, you know that you have to have those fun paperwork agreements for the transfer of funds back and forth. So we had all of that solidified, and we had a great plan. We were very excited about our plan. We were going to meet online because we have 4 universities scattered throughout the state of Minnesota. It didn't make sense to try and meet in person. and this was before COVID, so it still didn't make sense to try and meet in person. To bring people from the north, it was too cumbersome, and we figured that would actually deter people from participating. But we did decide that the campuses would hold individual in-person meetings with their campus cohorts. So we would each do that to get that in-person feel, and also some of that accountability piece that are needed, and maybe some peer mentoring. We planned a series of webinars to help educate the faculty, to provide that professional development piece. We had planned 6 webinars. We ended up with 7 because we ended up with a guest speaker due to participant request, which was the best possible scenario. They said, we want to learn more about this thing. And we said, okay, we'll find somebody to talk about that. So we had a series of webinars, and we planned for an OER summit located here at the Minnesota State University Mankato campus for the end of the spring semester. To provide that accountability, we wanted our participants to have to show something for the work that they're doing, to kind of give that accountability so that we could feel good about handing off that stipend funds. And then we were also planning on full day retreats for the leadership team to comb the project, make sure we were going in the right direction, and generally steer the project in the way that we wanted it to go. So everything was in place. We're in the summer phase. We're still excited. We're ready to rock. And we're talking time-wise, we're still in about August, September of the semester. So we're at the beginning of the semester when everybody's starting to get busy, but we're still excited and ready to work on this project. And we have lots of participants to choose from. We entered the fall phase about as fall kicked off for real in our semesters. We're hesitant, but we're not resistant. We're not actually dreading our meetings or doing any of those things that we all know. Some of those projects come up where we're like, oh gosh, I guess I have to go to this meeting. That wasn't happening yet, but we're realizing how much work we've all bitten off, and some of the challenges that might come with that, both with our own schedules and with our participants' schedules. So we're kind of that reality check is starting to set in, but it's not preventing work from getting done at this point. By our second cohort meeting, participants were starting to feel overwhelmed with the amount of work that they had decided to do. So we were very glad we had talked a couple of those people out of doing multiple projects, because it started to look fairly unrealistic by the second meeting, which was end of November, early December, which is of course when everybody's busy. Finals are coming up and grades are due and all that type of stuff. We really worked as a leadership team to rally the participants and to keep those spirits up, even though we were also having the same problems ourselves, because all of us teach, all of us do a lot of other projects, and we were feeling the crunch as well. And so by the first cohort meeting, we were having trouble finding volunteers to do those webinars that we had planned, and that became a little bit of a struggle. Collaboration sort of started to fall off as people's schedules got more and more compacted with outside things. We were all busy with other things as well as this project. And I think that idealism we all felt through the spring and summer phase was starting to taper off a little bit. We all tackled this project because we're passionate about OER and bringing this professional development to our faculty. But the reality of you only have so many hands and you only have so many hours in a day was starting to set in. And then all of our in-person events we canceled because we are all busy. We just felt like we were getting enough done online that we didn't need to meet in person. And I think that might have been a mistake. I think coming together to re-energize the team might have been better for collaboration in the long term. And we did have one of our participants drop out at this point by the second meeting because of that overwhelming nature of how much work there is to do when you think about transforming your course using a totally different textbook. It becomes, the reality of that starts to sink in at some point. So then we come to the winter phase, which is the most difficult phase of any project or any kind of collaboration. This is when your relationship is at its toughest. Things are kind of grinding to a halt. People may be resistant to the collaboration or to the partnership, and you really have to struggle to get things going again. So continuing on into our spring semester, so this is our second semester of the project, and it would be our probably 3 or 4 months in of having participants in, starting to meet, all those kind of good things. So we're several months into the actual professional development part of the project. The leadership team meetings kind of shortened and died out to finally after a few months. Many of the participants weren't responding to emails or coming to the webinars or coming to the meetings. So we kind of lost participant communication. And many were working one-on-one with the lead instructional designer who may not have been part of their campus, rather than their campus contacts because they were struggling with communication. So communication broke down is basically where we were at with the winter part of the project. This was also the beginning of the spring semester. So people were planning their courses. They were in the middle of research projects. They had other things that faculty are responsible for, committee meetings, professional development, tenure and promotion document, things like that were starting to take over. And so communication really started to break down at this point. And then COVID-19 hit. This was spring of 2020. And then COVID hit and things sort of fell apart even more than they had been. As you all know, this is nothing new. This has just happened to everybody. So we quickly switched gears. And despite the fact that I wish COVID had never happened, it did re-energize the leadership team. So we quickly worked together to switch gears. It kicked us back into almost that spring and summer phase of the project where we buckled down and realized, hey, this is serious. We've got to turn our attention back to this project. We're responsible for these funds. We need to be good stewards of this grant and really keep people's spirits up, because it's going to be hard to get them to focus when everything else is in chaos. We did cancel the in-person summit, OER summit, that just came when we were all in lockdown. And what we did instead was we accepted reports from the participants. They were very thorough. What did you do? How did this help? How much money were you saving your students? All those things we want to know about these types of projects when you're adopting OER. So we did get reports from all 36 participants. As I said, one did drop out. So we started with 37. We got reports from all 36. They were very grateful that we were willing to do this rather than have a virtual summit, which did not seem feasible at this time because, again, everybody's in chaos and stressed and didn't really want to, worry about this kind of thing. So it was the best way we could hold them accountable while also being empathetic to everything else that they were trying to do at the same time. So ultimately, we ended up working together, coming back as a team, communicating really well, and every one of our participants started communicating with us again. And all 36 folks participated and completed a meaningful OER adoption project. Our group came in just under budget, which if you've ever managed any kind of budget, this was my first real budget managing attempt. And I was very proud that we came in just, and I mean just by like $4. We came in very close to under budget. And we curated a playlist of professional development videos about textbook affordability, OER, and OER that we still share out with folks and is available to all of our participants and all of our cohort universities. And I'm planning on writing and publishing a design case in a peer-reviewed journal out of this. So kind of the long and short of what to do, what not to do, and how to manage this when things start to flag. So what are the takeaways from this that I'm hoping you take away if you ever have to manage, or maybe you have managed? And if you do have takeaways for me, I'd love to hear your experience as well. But start earlier in the academic year. By the time we got going and got the applications out, we really didn't get rolling with our participants until November, which is just too late in the year. And I think that's really why we started to see that slump, because it was right as people started to get really, really busy and also thinking about winter break. And so I think if we had started earlier, we would have had a better experience long term. Define your leadership roles and tasks early, so delegate responsibility. That's something I am not good at, and I think that would have helped me be less stressed as the project lead to have more defined, you are going to do this, and I'm going to do this, and you're going to do this. Find some sort of accountability mechanism for your participants. We had the OER summit. We quickly had to pivot, but we wanted to make sure we still had an accountability mechanism that I could turn into the grant committee if I needed to, or hold that so I have records of what we did. You know, if someone came and said, hey, I need this for my PDP, I can give that to them. Encourage more participant collaboration and peer support. We really needed more peer-to-peer interaction, more connection, particularly between the institutions. I think we saw that within an institution when they worked at the same university, but I'd love to encourage that cross collaboration between the participants. Communicate often, communicate. That's a great one. I also suggest some social engineering. If I were to do this over again, I would pair participants across universities to get that, to foster that collaboration and peer interaction. And then just encourage folks to take ownership and use collaborative terms, use collaborative language, use a lot of we, a lot of team, and just make everyone feel that they're part of a team. And that's really what can help foster that. Most of all, be flexible. You never know what's going to come up, including pandemics. And then I would also suggest that you post a follow-up survey. We did do this, but no one did actually take the survey, so we don't have any information. But if you want to measure long-term success, you're going to have to get some sort of metrics on how those implementations are going. So that is the 4 seasons of a multi-campus project. I hope this gave you some takeaways that you could take to use, even if it's a don't do this, to your own multi-campus or multi-institution project. So are there any questions or concerns I can answer for anyone at this time? I don't see any in the chat. Everybody's so quiet. All right. Well, I really appreciate your time today. I hope this was helpful. But thank you so much for your time and attention, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.